I'm going to give you a guided tour of how the EdHeads study program works and how it's used in conjunction with tuition. Every student has their own ID to log into, and that links to a student profile. The profile will set them work to do every week in Maths and English, which we call the weekly tasks. We believe it's very important that students study at the right level for them. So we're not so interested in what year they're in at school. What matters to us is what level they're at. So, for example, if you've got a year 5 child who's actually at level year 3, then we give them work starting from year 3 because that's the right level for them. Conversely, if we've got that year 5 child who's at year 7 level, then we would give them year 7 work. It's vitally important that students are given the work that's appropriate for them. If you give work that's too easy, then they'll get bored and give up. If you give work that's too difficult, they'll give up as well. It's important to give the right level. So if we look at that year 5 child who's at year 3 level, the only way you're going to bring them up in level is to start where they are and move forward from there. The reason for that is, particularly in subjects like Maths and English, a lot of the learning that's required in later years is built upon the building blocks of knowledge from the earlier years. So we always give students work that's at the right level for them and take them forward from that point. Another important part of that is that if you give work that's at the wrong level, particularly if it's too difficult, the student loses motivation. They lose motivation because they're bored, or they lose motivation because it's too difficult. And motivation is actually a key element in learning. If we're not motivated to do something, we're more inclined to give up. So motivation is a key part also of what EdHeads is about. And the first part of the motivation story is giving them work that's at the right level. Otherwise, you'll lose them straight away. Okay, so let's have a look inside the study program. As I said, each student has their own login. So if we log in with the family ID, username, and a password, that brings up the weekly task for that week. Now, the system automatically generates work to do from the student profile each week. Every Monday morning, a new set of weekly tasks is set at the right level. If the level needs adjusting, that will be done by the tutor who's making a judgment as to what the right level is. So obviously, from time to time when we start with a student, we'll give them an assessment, we'll find out background information which may be important as to where the student is from either the school or from parent. And from that we set the level that they're going to start at. But it's not the computer that decides that. It's always the tutor who's deciding what the right level is, based on their observation and working with the student. So as the student does their work, that provides information into the reports area. The reports area is a really important part of the EdHeads system. This gives information about how the student's doing. You'll see from this that we've got lots of subjects that the student can do exercises in. What the EdHeads study program has is exercises to do and lessons to watch in Maths, English and Science from year 1 to year 11, and exercises to do in many other subjects up to GCSE, but not the lessons to accompany those. Although, of course, the tutor may be giving help in those other subjects. The content for the study is there, and it all follows the national curriculum. So what we're looking at here is the average score that the student has scored in all of the work that they've done in each of these subjects. Parents have access to this, or the stakeholder of the student, if you like, has access to all of this information at any time. And in addition to that, there's a weekly report that's sent out by email every week, and that shows the work that was done the week before, what subjects exercises were done in, what topics within those subjects, and what the scores within those topics was, and how long the student took on each of those topics. So really useful information, both for parents and for the tutor. Within a subject, if I click on maths here, what you can now see is the detail of how the student's doing in each of the topics that they've done work in. Again, really important information this, because it's showing where the student's doing well and where they're not doing so well. The color coding is like traffic lights. Anything averaging above 60% is in the green, between 40 and 60% is in the yellow, and averaging below 40% is in the red. And it shows the maximum score, the average score in that topic, what happened the last time, and how long the student spent in each of the topics doing work on them. And within a topic, you can also see what progress is being made. So for each topic the student's done work in, a progress chart is created. And again, really useful information to see that things are going in the right direction, because if they're not, that means we need to change whatever it is we're doing to help the student. For the tutor, very important, because they can pick up on little blips and think, okay, what happened here? And by clicking on the detail line here, we can see which questions the student got right and which ones they got wrong. And this again helps the tutor to target and focus on exactly where the student needs help, because it's telling them which subject, which topic they're needing help in. And then within a topic, you can look to see from the exercise results as we see here, if there's any part of a topic that's causing a problem, or any type of question that's causing a problem, because very often there are patterns that you can pick up on, and the tutor can then focus on exactly where that help is needed. So, for example, in this illustration, we can see everything to do with indices the student got wrong, everything else they got right. So this means that the tutor is going to spend the right time with the student, because they're not going to be wasting their time on things the student already knows. They're focusing and targeting in on where the student is having a problem. And the way that tuition sessions are run with EdHeads, normally, though not exclusively, is you have a small group of students. Each one of them will be working on their study program during the session. And during that session, each one of them will get one-to-one help from the tutor on exactly what they need help with. So it's not a class lesson session like you get in school, where everyone's expected to be learning the same thing at the same speed. Of course, that doesn't work very well. What this is about is tailoring it and targeting it for each student individually. So within that session, small group of students, the tutor is going to have looked at the reports in advance, see where each student needs help, and as the others are getting on with their work on the study program, the tutor is going to spend one-to-one time with each student on what that student needs help with. It becomes really effective and very powerful way of helping students. It works very well. Now, I spoke a bit about motivation before, and engaging the student in doing work is obviously an important thing. It's important that they do lots of practice. Practice is what consolidates learning. And sometimes, very often in fact, schools aren't able, because of the way that the curriculum is driven, not able to give sufficient practice time or feedback on the practice that's done, so that the knowledge gets consolidated. This is something that EdHeads is able to do really well. In the practice exercises here, the student can go anywhere they need or want to go. So maybe they've got a history test next week. They want to test themselves on the tutors to see if they know how they're going to do in the test. They can go back to previous years to go over things that maybe they're still not quite familiar with and need to do a bit more practice on. Or if they want to go ahead, they can go ahead as well. So practice exercise area allows them to go wherever they want. Also, of course, if there was something that came up in a lesson that week, in maths, say, and they didn't understand it, before the next maths lesson, they can watch a lesson in that as many times as they want, so that they feel more comfortable the next time they have a maths lesson at school. As I said, motivation is an important part of learning. So when the student does an exercise, we'll choose an exercise here. These numbers and colours are the colours and numbers, obviously, that came from the reports area. If we choose to do an exercise, when they're doing an exercise, they can play a game alongside it. They don't have to play a game. They can do an exercise without the game over here. When they first get their login, all of the games are locked. To unlock a game, you have to earn credits. To earn credits, you have to do work. But as I said, the game is not part of the exercise isn't part of the game. So to show how it works. The purpose of the game is just to make it a bit more fun, a bit more engaging to do the work. So if I start the exercise here, here's a perfectly normal question, nothing to do with football, except for the little picture behind it. It's just a normal question. So I put the answer in and I get to check the answer. It tells me if I've got it right or wrong straight away, and then I get a bit of the game to play. The games are always simple sorts of games. They're just meant to be entertaining and engaging, but not deeply immersive. So I'm going to set the power of my shot and the direction of my shot, and then it goes on to the next question. The point about getting work marked straight away is really important educationally. Often with paper-based exercises, it's not marked for quite a long time after the student has done the work. And that means they don't have that same engagement with the fact that they might have got something wrong. And that's very important, because the way that they're doing it then may become a habit because they think they're doing it right because no one's giving them the feedback that actually it's wrong. So getting the work marked instantly is actually a very important educational part of what we do at EdHeads. So if I get a question wrong, it tells me I've got it wrong. I still get to play the game. The game is not a reward system, it's an engagement system. It's to make doing the work more fun. If you've got a student who's not doing so well, we want to encourage them to keep going and not think, oh, I never get to play the game. The game is about engagement, encouraging them to keep going. It does make the game a bit more difficult when you get something wrong, though. But you can still score. And when you get something wrong, you can either retry the question or get it to tell you the answer. So that illustrates how that part of the EdHeads study program works. And at the end of the exercise, here's the credits I earned, and here's the score I got in the game. There's a bit more motivation. We also have leaderboards. Leaderboards are in the games, not on the exercises, not the academic side of things. And again, that's a bit more motivation because very often they like to get themselves to the top of the board. More often, rather than look at the overall of all of the games, they like to see where they're doing in a particular game or games that they play a lot of. So if we look at this game here that I just played, here it is at the top, and you can see that different students will think, oh, I need 4 more goals, I'm ahead of this one here, and so on. And that is just a little bit of motivation, but it makes it a bit more fun to do the work, and that's important. There are also lessons to watch. You can either find a lesson by going into the subject and drilling down that way, or you can put a search in, and that brings up a series of lessons that relate to that particular topic that we're looking to do some work in, because you need to have other lessons showing as well, just in case it's not a particular topic that the student needs help in, but one of the related things. Remember I said about building blocks in terms of maths. So for example, if a student is struggling with some questions on Pythagoras, it may not be the lack of understanding about the theory of Pythagoras, it may actually be something to do with basic information about triangles. So we bring up lessons that relate to the topic as well as the topic itself. So that's how the EdHeads study program works and how it's used in conjunction with tuition, as I mentioned, where each student is treated as an individual and looking at their needs from an individual point of view, not in a class lesson type of situation, which means that progress is achieved much more quickly. And at the same time, we keep all of the people involved in that student's progress informed through the reports that they can look at any time they want, and through the weekly reports that show what the student did the week before. Hope you found that useful, and you can always contact us through the website to ask any further questions about how it all works. Thank you for your time.